Hi friends, Home Group Leaders Notes for the first part of Matthew chapter 12. We've just seen at the end of chapter 11 Jesus' wonderful invitation to come to him, all who are weary and burdened, and he will give them rest. That rest is a comprehensive rest. It's an end times eschatological rest. It's the deep rest of our souls that we all long for. I think what happens now is Matthew points us towards a way in which Jesus brings a particular kind of rest, or that thinking about rest spurs Matthew to record this incident with Jesus that all has to do with the Sabbath, the weekly rhythm of rest from work that God had given to his people Israel, from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. This rhythm of ceasing from all your work, an expression of rest and trust in God, that was gave a rhythm to the lives of the people of Israel. And so what you see here is a complex but really profound relationship that Jesus has to this idea of Sabbath. Sabbath controversy comes up again and again through the Gospels. Probably more in some of the other Gospels than in Matthew, but it's in focus here. And what's really interesting is by the end of this little section, the Pharisees go from simply questioning Jesus. Look, it's not really a question, is it? It's just an accusation. Your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath. They go from that to, down in verse 14, they end up plotting how they could kill Jesus. So this is obviously a big thing for them. It's a massive claim that Jesus is making. It's something that the Pharisees take really seriously. This whole relationship between Jesus and this idea and the Sabbath. I probably not going to go into too much detail about the relationship that we have to the Sabbath. As this side of Jesus' death and resurrection. That's a sort of complex and varied field of theology, I guess, and people will come to different thoughts about that. But I don't think that that's actually the focus of this passage. The focus of this passage really is on the identity of Jesus, and it's just sort of continuing on this theme of Jesus making stunning claims about who he is. And then giving evidence to back it up. So you read through, his disciples are picking heads of grain on the Sabbath. They're walking through the fields. The Pharisees say that they're doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath. What's interesting about that is it seems to be that that's not something that you will find in your Old Testament, a law about picking grain on the Sabbath, but what the religious leaders around Jesus' time had done was they had, because the law didn't really go into lots of specifics about what it looked like to rest on the Sabbath, they had created a whole series of other laws to go around outside it. So if you've got the I'll put a T here for Torah, the written law that God gave his people Israel. The religious leaders had sort of put a fence around it and created a whole bunch of other laws to go around it, so that the thinking being, if you stop here, you won't go anywhere near breaking that. So this isn't actually unlawful in terms of what's written in the Torah. But it does seem to be it was unlawful according to those extra laws that the religious leaders had fenced around the law. And so what Jesus does now, though, he uses this as another opportunity to fill in and let people know the reality of who he is. And he points these experts in the law back to the Old Testament. He points them back to the law and to the and so what he does here, he talks about David. He basically says, well, I am greater than, if David was able to do this is written for us. You can sort of chase up the cross references there. in Samuel. If David was able to do that with his companions, what Jesus is saying here is, I am greater than even David. So that's the claim he's making here. And then he makes this other, it just keeps going from verse 5 onwards. From verse 5 onwards, he keeps going and says, he makes this another incredible claim that he is not only greater than David, he's greater than the temple. Those are, if you get into the mindset of these Pharisees who are asking this, you can sort of start to understand why they are enraged by this and they seek to kill Jesus, because of the massive claim that he's making. What you get from verse 9 down to verse 14 is then, so this is kind of this confrontation up here. From verse 9 onwards, it's sort of like an illustration, a worked illustration of what Jesus is talking about, that he is in fact the Lord of the Sabbath and he has authority. And he raises this dilemma for the people who are there, these Pharisees, and he says, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" So he wants to get past the legalism of the Pharisees and go to the heart of the law, the intention of the law. And he says, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" And he concludes it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. So he heals the guy, and so this is a really striking confrontation that Jesus has, and it's all to do with the claims he's making about who he is. I've titled this. I've put a title up here. We'll see if I stick with this by Sunday, but for now I'm calling it this passage, Jesus, the center of history. Because that really is the claim he's making. All the signs and symbols of the Old Testament find their fulfillment in him. The whole structure of the Torah, the life that God had given to his people Israel, now has come to its climax, its fulfillment in the person of Jesus. He is the greater one and the one who comes. He's the reality that of which those things were just a shadow. So it's a massive claim that Jesus is making. And what he does next is, I think this is sort of split into two parts. So this is that claim about the Lord of the Sabbath up here, from verse 1 down to verse 14. You can see that here. Then from verse 15 down to 21, Jesus goes to another part of the Bible, to Isaiah, and we'll be looking at this passage later in the year, actually. It's just a stunning passage where Isaiah prophesies this coming servant. The servant who will proclaim justice to the nations. He will bring justice through victory. So he's a victorious servant, but he's also the gentle and lowly servant at the same time. There's this wonderful image of a bruised reed he will not break. I have put down the bottom some quotes from this book. It's by a guy called Richard Sibbes, who was a Puritan writer in the 17th century. It's a bit like it's a bit hard going to sort of plough through it, but it's richly rewarding if you can. He wrote this little book called The Bruised Reed, all about this sort of from this passage in Isaiah and how it's fulfilled in Jesus, and some of the themes there flow on from what we've looked at last week about Jesus being the one who is gentle and lowly with his people. So there's some quotes there that you can enjoy reading through in your preparation. There's also some quotes here from Don Carson in his commentary on this that will, if you have questions about some of those things, they might be addressed there. But feel free to get in touch too if you would like to. Okay, God bless. I pray that that's a rich time as you are confronted as a group and as a church, as we are again confronted with the glory and majesty of who Jesus is, and his tenderness as the one who is the suffering servant who does not break bruised reeds who come to him, and yet at the same time will bring justice to the world through victory and is alone the hope of the nations. So pray it's a really rich and rewarding time in your groups, and we'll see you next time.